Ambassador Vina Karim's heart thundered in her chest as she strode into the massive galactic tribunal chamber, its crystalline walls towering hundreds of meters above, where representatives of 7,000 species now turned to watch her entrance. She was the only human in a sea of aliens, and today she was the last hope for Earth. "The defendant will approach the central platform," announced Grand Arbiter Mirvash, his voice resonating through the chamber without apparent amplification. The 12-armed, mollusk-like being's skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns that conveyed his barely contained disdain. Vina kept her face impassive as she walked forward. Behind her, she felt the collective hatred of the Galactic Assembly burning into her back. In just 2 centuries since discovering faster-than-light travel, humans had committed what the Assembly deemed ecological terrorism by terraforming 3 uninhabited planets without proper permits. The punishment: complete quarantine of the Sol system for 500 years. "Ambassador Karim," said Second Arbiter Zolotri, a towering insectoid whose mandibles clicked with each syllable. "Your species stands accused of willful desecration of protected celestial bodies. Your defense has been unconvincing." Vina stopped at the center of the vast chamber, standing on a circular platform that projected her image to every corner of the room. She carried no weapons. None would be allowed here, but she clutched a small iridescent cube in her palm. "Before you pass judgment," she said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse, "I invoke the right of final evidence, as permitted under Galactic Assembly law." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The right of final evidence was rarely used. It demanded that all new evidence be considered no matter how late in the proceedings. "Very well," Grand Arbiter Mirvash replied with obvious irritation. "Present your evidence." Vina raised the cube above her head. "I present not just evidence, but proof that humanity deserves not punishment, but gratitude." She pressed her thumb to the cube's surface. It glowed brilliantly before projecting a 3-dimensional image that filled the chamber. The complete genetic sequence of the Crystal Plague virus that had ravaged 17 systems over the past decade, killing billions. But this wasn't just the sequence. It was annotated extensively, with a comprehensive cure protocol highlighted in pulsing gold. "Impossible," gasped Delegate Foros of the Eltican hegemony, one of humanity's most vocal accusers. "Our greatest minds have worked on this for years." "And yet," Vina replied calmly, "a team of human virologists solved it in 7 months. Our expertise in biological sciences, the very expertise you condemn us for in our terraforming, has created the only viable cure for the deadliest pandemic in galactic history." The room erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions, demands, and accusations. But Vina wasn't finished. "This cure is being freely offered to all affected worlds," she continued when the noise subsided. "The distribution protocols are included in this data package. But make no mistake, if Earth is quarantined, production of this cure becomes impossible at the necessary scale." The Grand Arbiter's skin flashed patterns of shock, anger, and finally, calculation. "Are you threatening to withhold a cure, Ambassador?" he asked quietly. Vina smiled thinly. "Not at all. I'm simply stating a fact. The manufacturing process requires specific conditions found only in our terraforming facilities, the very facilities you wish to shut down. The choice is yours, Arbiter. Punish humanity, or save billions of lives." "This is extortion!" bellowed Delegate Vorax of the Talgid Confederacy, his crystalline exoskeleton vibrating with fury. "The human holds a cure hostage to escape justice." Vina remained perfectly still, her gaze locked with the Grand Arbiter's compound eyes. The cube in her hand continued projecting the cure's data, casting eerie patterns across her face. "It is not extortion to point out consequences," she replied evenly. "Earth did not create this plague. We simply solved what you could not." A hush fell over the chamber as Elder Ilzat, the ancient fungoid representative of the mycelial collective, raised a tendril to speak. As one of the founding species of the Galactic Assembly, her words carried immense weight. "I have seen 10,000 cycles of galactic politics." Elder Ilzat's spores formed words in the air as she communicated. "Never have I witnessed such audacity. Yet, the data appears authentic." A team of xenobiologists had already begun analyzing the cure protocol. One of them, a gelatinous quorum scientist named Leth Prim, oozed forward. "The cure is viable," Leth Prim confirmed, translucent body pulsing with surprise. "And the ambassador speaks truth. The synthesis requires specific gravitational and atmospheric conditions found only in human terraforming chambers." Grand Arbiter Mir Vosh's tentacles curled in agitation. "This changes nothing about your crimes, human. You violated sacred protocols established over millennia. Did we?" Vina opened her hand, allowing the cube to float upward, expanding its projection to reveal a second data set. "By your own Colonial Expansion Treaty, Article 117.3, uninhabited. Worlds with less than 60% life potential may be developed by any species capable of reaching them first." She gestured to the data. "Our surveys indicated all 3 worlds fell below that threshold. We submitted these findings to the Central Registry as required." "The registry never approved these surveys," shouted Deputy Minister Ghazal from the back of the chamber. "They never rejected them either," Vina countered. "According to your laws, failure to respond within 1 galactic standard year constitutes tacit approval. It's been 3 years since our first submission." Another wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. Many representatives were hastily consulting their data terminals. "She's correct," admitted Arbitration Clerk Oz Kelm reluctantly. "The humans followed bureaucratic procedure. The registry's backlog meant their submissions were never properly reviewed." Vina allowed herself a small smile. "So Earth stands accused of following your laws too precisely while developing a cure you couldn't. Some might call that impressive." Ambassador Raikon of the Meldari stepped forward, his translucent wings catching the light. "I have been silent until now, but I must speak. My homeworld has lost 17 million citizens to the Chrysatal plague. If the human speaks true, how can we justify punishment over pride?" The Grand Arbiter's skin flickered with rapid calculations and internal conflict. "This was not what this trial was meant to address." "No," Vina agreed. "It was meant to make an example of humanity, to put the upstart species in its place. But perhaps we can offer something better than submission. Perhaps we offer partnership instead." She touched the cube again, and the hologram shifted to show a new image, a model of human terraforming technology, but with significant modifications. "This is what our engineers developed last year, a terraforming protocol that works 40% faster while preserving 85% of existing microbiological ecosystems. We can share this technology with the Assembly, along with the plague cure. All we ask is to be judged by our contributions, not our mistakes. Clever manipulation does not absolve your species' recklessness," hissed Executor Nareth, the serpentine diplomat from the Ophidian Dominion. "The human tries to bargain her way out of consequences." The chamber had become divided. On one side stood those species most affected by the plague, their representatives now huddled in urgent consultation. On the other, traditionalists who viewed humanity as dangerous upstarts who needed to be contained before they disrupted the delicate balance of galactic politics. Grand Arbiter Mirvosh raised all 12 of his limbs, commanding silence. "Ambassador Karim," he said, the bioluminescent patterns on his skin shifting to formal diplomatic mode, "you present us with a difficult choice." "I present you with an opportunity," Vina corrected him. "But before you decide, there is one more piece of evidence to consider. From within her formal diplomatic robes, she withdrew a second device, a small obsidian sphere that she placed on the floor. It projected a navigational chart of the galaxy, but with anomalous readings highlighted throughout the outer rim. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected these energy signatures, she explained, her voice grave. We've analyzed them extensively. They match no known species in the assembly records. The xenobiologists and military representatives in the chamber immediately stiffened, recognizing the implications. How many signatures? Demanded Fleet Commander Bzara Toll, his holographic representative suddenly looming larger. 217 vessels. Vina replied softly. Moving, in formation toward assembly space. Their weapon signatures are concerning. You claim to have detected an invasion force that our combined sensor networks missed? Scoffed Science Director Quillian, his quills bristling with skepticism. Vina nodded toward the projection. Earth sits at the edge of your known space. These signals originate from beyond the Perseus Void, a region your monitoring stations don't cover adequately. We developed enhanced quantum resonance detectors to scan it last year. Elder Ilzat's spores swirled anxiously. If this is accurate, how long until they reach inhabited systems? At their current velocity, 14 months, Vina replied. If they maintain course, the Cygnus colonies would be first in their path. The chamber erupted again, this time with genuine alarm. The Cygnus colonies were home to over 40 billion sentient beings across 12 species. Ambassador, Grand Arbiter Mir Vosh said quietly, his voice somehow reaching Vina despite the chaos. If you fabricated this threat to influence these proceedings, then quarantine Earth, take the plague cure, and prepare without us, Vina interrupted. But if I'm telling the truth, you're about to face the greatest threat the Assembly has encountered in centuries. Without humanity's military technology and biological expertise, your chances decrease significantly. Fleet Commander Bzara Toll's hologram turned to the Grand Arbiter. The human fleets are small, but their battle tactics are unorthodox. During the Proxima Centauri border incident, 3 human vessels disabled a pirate squadron 3 times their size. And their adaptive immunity research is decades ahead of ours, added Leth Prim, the quorum scientist. If this is a biological attack, the Grand Arbiter's skin pulsed with deep thought patterns. We require verification of these signals. Of course, Vina agreed. I've included all sensor data and detection protocols in this presentation. Send your experts to Earth's outposts. They can confirm our findings within days. Ambassador Rai Khan of the Meldari moved to stand beside Vina, a powerful symbolic gesture. My people will dispatch observers immediately. If the human speaks truth about both the plague cure and this threat, we owe them our attention, not our condemnation. 27 hours later, the Galactic Tribunal reconvened in emergency session. The chamber, previously filled with the contemptuous murmur of species ready to pass judgment, now buzzed with anxious tension. Verification teams had confirmed both the efficacy of the plague cure and the existence of the mysterious fleet approaching from beyond the Perseus Void. Vina stood once more on the central platform, but the mood had shifted dramatically. Representatives who had called for Earth's quarantine now watched her with reluctant respect, or at least practical necessity. The Verification Council has submitted its findings, announced Grand Arbiter Mir Vosh, his skin now pulsing with formal patterns of diplomatic urgency. The evidence presented by Ambassador Karim has been authenticated. The approaching vessels match no known design in our archives. A holographic representation of the alien fleet appeared above the chamber. The ships were massive, asymmetrical constructs that seemed to defy conventional physics, their hulls comprised of what appeared to be living material. We've designated them the Nexus Collective, said Admiral Krell of the Assembly Defense Force, his carapace gleaming under the chamber lights. Based on energy signatures, each vessel carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Elder Ilzat's spores formed worried patterns. Have attempts at communication been made? Multiple attempts across all known frequencies and protocols, confirmed Diplomatic Corps Director Veshnar. They've responded with only one message, repeated across all channels. The message played throughout the chamber, a discordant series of sounds that the translation matrix struggled to process before finally rendering, "All will be harvested. Resistance extends suffering." Vina stepped forward. 3 hours ago, Earth Central Command authorized me to offer our full military and scientific resources to assist the Assembly in meeting this threat. "How generous," remarked Executor Nerith sarcastically. "Now that you need our help as well." "We don't," Vina replied calmly. "Earth is not in the invasion path. We could fortify Sol's system and wait it out. But that's not who we are." She gestured to her aide who had been permitted to join her, a quiet human woman named Ria Okonjo, who carried a secured data terminal. Ria activated the device, displaying detailed schematics of weapon systems and defensive technologies previously unknown to the Assembly. "Project Aegis," Vina explained, "a planetary defense grid we've been developing since we first encountered hostile species in the Procyon sector. It can be adapted to protect the Cygnus colonies within 8 months." Admiral Krell leaned forward, his compound eyes fixed on the schematics. "These targeting algorithms, they're far more advanced than our current systems. Humans evolved as predators," Vina said simply. "Tracking moving targets is in our DNA." Grand Arbiter Mirvosh's tentacles curled thoughtfully. "You offer much, Ambassador. What does Earth ask in return?" "Full membership in the Galactic Assembly," Vina replied without hesitation. "Not probationary status. Full voting rights, unrestricted travel privileges, and access to the Assembly's scientific archives." The chamber filled with objections until Fleet Commander Bizarra Toll silenced them with a thunderous slam of his war gauntlet. "I have reviewed the human military capabilities," he announced. "Their ships are few, but their tactical innovations are impressive. Their biological weapons defenses even more so. We would be fools to reject this alliance out of pride." The central chamber of the Cygnus Defense Command Center hummed with activity as officers from 27 species coordinated the largest combined military operation in Assembly history. At the heart of it all stood Vina, now wearing the silver and blue uniform of the newly formed Joint Defense Initiative, the patches of both Earth and the Galactic Assembly emblazoned on her shoulders. 6 months had passed since the tribunal. Earth had been granted provisional full membership in the Assembly, the final vote pending the outcome of the approaching conflict. The mysterious fleet, now confirmed as the biomechanical armada of the Nexus Collective, had accelerated its approach and would reach the outer defense perimeter in just 18 hours. "Last shield matrix is online," reported Chief Engineer Lockery, his 4 hands moving rapidly across the holographic controls. "The human Aegis technology has been successfully integrated with our existing defensive grid." Admiral Krell nodded approvingly. "The adaptation was completed in half the projected time. Your engineers are unexpectedly efficient, Ambassador. We work well under pressure," Vina replied with a tight smile. "Something about our evolutionary history as prey and predator both." The defense strategy had been controversial. Instead of positioning their combined fleets in a traditional defensive formation, Vina had convinced the Assembly strategists to adopt an asymmetrical approach, with key vessels hidden within the atmospheres of gas giants and others disguised as mining stations. The Aegis shield grid would absorb the initial assault, while the concealed ships launched a coordinated counterstrike. "I still question this strategy," murmured Fleet Commander Bizarra Toll as he joined them at the command table. "No civilization has ever survived direct conflict with an unknown species of this technological level. No civilization had humans as allies before," replied Commander Aisha Ortega, Earth's senior military representative. Her weathered face bore the scars of the Proxima campaign, lending weight to her words. A warning klaxon sounded as Lieutenant DeRille, an aquatic tactical officer, called out, "Energy spike detected! They're launching probes toward the outer colonies." Everyone watched as the scanner showed dozens of small craft detaching from the main Nexus fleet, accelerating toward the populated moons of Cygnus IV. "They're scanning for life forms," observed Science Director Quillian, monitoring the electromagnetic patterns. "Looking for collection targets if their message is to be believed." Vina stepped forward. "Activate Protocol Phantom." Throughout the Cygnus system, specialized transmitters began broadcasting scrambled biosignatures, creating false readings of scattered populations across uninhabited worlds while masking the true population centers. The technology, another human innovation, had been deployed in the preceding months. On the tactical display, they watched as the Nexus probes changed course, diverting toward the false signals. "Remarkable," whispered Elder Ilzat, who had insisted on being present despite the danger. "They cannot distinguish between real and artificial biosignatures." "They're harvesters," Vina explained. "They seek out life, but they don't understand it. That's their weakness." The first probes reached the false signal locations, deploying collection mechanisms into empty atmosphere. The confusion in their response was evident as they attempted to recalibrate. "Now," ordered Admiral Krell. Concealed defense platforms activated, ensnaring the confused probes in quantum stasis fields, another innovation combining human theoretical physics with assembly engineering. 17 probes captured intact," reported Commander Ortega with satisfaction. "Our science teams can begin analysis immediately." But their small victory was short-lived. The main Nexus fleet suddenly accelerated, their formation changing from exploration to assault configuration. "They know," said Fleet Commander Bizarra Toll grimly. "They've recognized the trap." Vina nodded to Commander Ortega. "Execute Phase 2. Throughout the system, hidden human vessels broke cover, launching specialized missiles not toward the Nexus ships, but into the space between them. The missiles detonated in brilliant flashes, releasing clouds of engineered microparticles. "What are those?" demanded Admiral Krell. "Quantum resonance disruptors," Commander Ortega explained. "They interfere with the biomechanical communication networks our analysis detected in the captured probes." On the tactical display, the perfect formation of the Nexus fleet began to waver as ships lost synchronization with each other. The command center view screen showed the aftermath of what would later be called the Battle of Cygnus Gateway. The Nexus fleet hung in disarray, nearly a third of their vessels disabled by the combined tactics of human ingenuity and assembly firepower. The remainder had withdrawn to regroup beyond the system's edge, but intercepts of their communications suggested confusion rather than retreat. "Their hive intelligence was unprepared for our countermeasures," Science Director Quillian reported, his quills vibrating with excitement as he analyzed real-time data. "The quantum disruptors have severed connections between their command nodes." Vina stood with Grand Arbiter Mir Vosh, who had arrived by fast transport once the initial engagement concluded. His skin displayed patterns of astonishment and reluctant admiration. "In 10,000 years of assembly history, the Grand Arbiter said quietly, no species has coordinated such an effective first-contact defense against a technologically superior force." "We had help," Vina acknowledged, gesturing to the diverse crew working throughout the command center. This was truly a joint operation. The Grand Arbiter's primary eyes focused intently on her. Yet it was human strategy that provided the decisive advantage. "You anticipated their biological nature when our analysts saw only machines. Humans understand predatory behavior," Commander Ortega interjected as she joined them. "We recognize the harvest patterns from our own history. They're strip-mining life itself." A communication officer interrupted them. "Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the retreating Nexus vessels. It's different from their previous message." The transmission played through the command center. "The harvest is suspended. The quick mines are acknowledged. Negotiation parameters." Requested. A stunned silence fell over the command center before erupting into cheers and the varied expressions of relief specific to each species present. The Nexus Collective, apparently, had never encountered resistance significant enough to force diplomatic engagement. 6 hours later, in an unprecedented emergency session of the full Galactic Assembly, Grand Arbiter Meyer Vosch stood before the representatives of 7,000 worlds. "Today marks a turning point in our collective history," he announced, his skin glowing with formal diplomatic patterns. "The threat we faced was greater than any in our recorded history. That we stand here now, preparing for negotiation rather than extinction, is due in no small part to the contribution of Earth." Vina stood on the central platform, flanked by Commander Ortega and the human scientific team that had developed both the plague cure and the quantum disruption technology. "Therefore," continued the Grand Arbiter, "it is the unanimous decision of the Arbitration Council that Earth be granted immediate and permanent full membership in the Galactic Assembly, with all rights and privileges thereto." The chamber, which, months earlier, had nearly condemned humanity to isolation, now erupted in approval. Species who had once viewed humans with suspicion or contempt now recognized the value of humanity's unique perspective and adaptability. Vina stepped forward to address the assembly. "On behalf of Earth, I accept this honor with gratitude and humility. When we reached for the stars, we hoped to find friends, though we prepared for adversaries. Today, we have found both." She paused, looking around at the vast gathering of diverse life forms. The Nexus Collective believed they could harvest life throughout this galaxy without consequence. They failed to understand that life, in all its forms, fights back. And when life forms unite, as we have today, we become something greater than the sum of our parts. Grand Arbiter Meyer Vosch extended a ceremonial tentacle, which Vina clasped in the traditional gesture of assembly membership. "The humans have a saying," Vina continued. "They call it humanity's finest hour, when we rise above our limitations, to achieve something previously thought impossible. Today wasn't humanity's finest hour, it was the galaxy's." As she spoke these words, the assembly chambers transformed into a sea of bioluminescence, chromatic shifts, pheromone releases, and sonic vibrations. The applause of 7,000 species acknowledging a fundamental truth. The galaxy had changed forever. In the space above Cygnus IV, the first diplomatic vessel prepared to make contact with the Nexus Collective. Its crew included representatives from 12 assembly species, with Ambassador Vina Karim leading the delegation. The Predators had become negotiators. The Harvesters would now face a united galaxy, and humanity, once on trial for its audacity, had become the bridge between worlds.